What's going on, everybody? This is James Grandmaster Facts Voice, and this is another episode of the Facts Project. Today, special guest, Braxton Cosby from Starchild Comics. Thank you for being here, brother.
Man, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Look, I appreciate everything that basically you've showed me so far. Now, for those of you that do not know, now Starchild Comics, now what I like to do is I like to, of course, incorporate myself in talking to a lot of basically brand new comic publishers and comic authors who are out there starting their companies, especially through Kickstarter and indie comics as a whole. So Braxton, what got you into comics in the first place as wanting to do this as a full-time career?
Well, what's crazy is that, I grew up with comics, everybody back in the 80s and things like that. And I was even telling somebody, man, it was a show back in the day called Sunday Funnies. And they would literally sit down and just read. And there was always these little stop motion, kind of comic things. And that was real, real cool. And then as I went through school, they ended up having like they didn't call it Justice League back there. They called it Super Friends. And
yes.
They had things like that. And then like Spider-Man and his amazing friends. So superheroes, I grew up on them, and of course I started grabbing the comics. And my favorite comics were like X-Men, Fantastic Four, if you're talking about Marvel. And then when it comes down to DC, it was always Batman. That was my dude, So kind of grew up with that. Back, I think in the 6th grade, I think I ended up making my own. I started a comic. It was like maybe 6 pages where I came up with some characters. And I was like, this is cool. Just kind of drawing them out in black and white. So then later on, I became a novelist in 2010. And I ended up writing over 16 books. We opened up our own publishing company, Cosby Media Productions, for books. We had like 30 authors with over 60 titles in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. And I was published at first by a couple of publishers. One ended up going under, and then I got the rights back. I bounced my book to another publisher, and they did a decent job with it. But then I started kind of looking at like, man, well, what are they doing that I can't do? So that's why I ended up buying the rights back. I felt like it was just going to be bigger. Eventually, my own way. I could do the covers. I could do everything. I kind of got into the business, started becoming a scribe of it, and learning how everything went with publishing. So once I ended up getting the Star-Crossed Saga done, which was my young adult sci-fi series, I jumped into writing superhero fiction. And that's where Keyshawn Dodds, who was one of the authors we bought early on, he had done the Menzuo series, and he had published them like in early 2000s. Like he had done like maybe the first 3. And when he came along, he was like, he wanted to turn the rights over and see what we did with it. So we ended up rebranding it, new art, logos, the whole 9 yards, just trying to really rebuild it. And another good friend of mine had written another superhero series we have called Majesty of Canaan, which is like 7 military people who come up to this cave and meet this angel who gives them superpowers with this material called oromite. One guy gets it fused to his arm. A girl has super speed. This other one kind of shoots Chinese stars. And it was just real, real cool. So I was like, man, I'm missing out. Like, I need to jump in this, Right. So I ended up, came up with this crazy idea with superheroes that were real broken people with a lot of flaws. I wanted to make them as flawed as I could. And then just saying, hey, what if one day people with issues like all of us got superpowers? What would they do? What would that look like? And that's really the premise of the Cape. And I ended up kind of mixing reality TV with it. So it was real wild. And, the book got a lot of love, and I've been a couple of awards with it. And I came out with the sequel, Overdrive, which was even crazier. And then just last year, a couple of years ago, we had brought a couple of other authors in with their superhero novels. Daniel Payton with Bark. He had a trilogy he wrote. And then we had Lawrence St. John with Metatron. And he's up to 4 books now. So we were sitting around like, you know what, we should jump in this comic thing. What do you guys think? Maybe we'll get more readers, because I was at these conventions and selling the books and doing pretty good, but we were missing out. There was a lot of people who came up with kids, and the kids would be like, oh, this is just a book. Is it a graphic novel? Or is it a book? And I'm like, no, this is a chapter book. You got to read it. And they were like, oh, right. They want, and even the parents wanted to buy it. I said, you want me to buy it for you? I get it. And they were like, no. So I'm like, man, we got to capitalize on this. So we came up with the idea for the comics, and we really wanted to use both of the mediums to sell each other. So at the end of the comic book, you'll see it'll say like catch up with the origin story of the Cape, catch up with the origin story of Menzuo, Metatron, of Bark, and it's like a QR code. So if you scan it, you'll go right to our website and you'll be able to pick up those books. And then the same thing with the novels. The novels will have pictures of the comics. So we didn't want to retell the story. It was just an extension. So the comics are part of the lore of the superhero series that we've already written, and I think that's what makes us different from a lot of indie publishers, is that they may, comics, they may just have comics, or they may just have novels, but really nobody's doing the novels and the comics. Some people have graphic novels, but we've got these, 50,000, 80,000 word novels, which is a lot of room to write and really give you a deep backdrop of where these characters started from, and their story and their story arcs as they have moved on. So each one of these series, you have no less than 3 novels, and all of a sudden you got this comic. So now you can get the visual representation of what we're all trying to build, so now you can see these crazy sketches and drawings that these amazing artists have done. And that way people could actually see where we were going, where it was in our head, because we've designed everything from the ground up. All the characters, yes, we didn't draw them because, we saved that for people who were much more talented. But as far as the designs and the costumes and the superpowers, all that came from the authors. And we were sitting around, we said, how are we going to get this funded? And I started doing research, how much it would cost to get a comic made. Like, we got to do a Kickstarter. So a lot of people kind of judge us like, well, you guys are going to come out with 4 different novels. Very different, not like just one, like, issue 1, 2, and 3 of the same book. And I said, no, this is what we're building. This is what we've done. We've come up with Cosby Media Productions. I was very intentional about coming up with our own world. So, there's the DCEU, there's the MCU, and we came up with the CMP-DSU, Cosby Media Productions dedicated superhero universe. So out of all the novels we have, this is a dedicated superhero universe where you're here, or as you read the novels, you'll see references of all the other characters. We're all in the same world, a shared universe. And so now we got these comics coming out, and like, we're just thrilled. We even ended up writing the first book of a series called Infinity 7, which is basically like our Avengers. So that ended up being a team up with me, Kyle Champion, who wrote Majesties, and Keyshawn Dodds with Menzuo. We started off at book 1 in Infinity 7, where you got 14 superheroes continuing their story, where they finally get together and do a team up. And then part 2, we're kind of working on the outline now. That'll be out before the end of the year. And then books 3 and 4 will incorporate some of the rest of the authors that we have with their superhero series. So we're just excited because, we got it funded. That's where it started from. Ended up getting some fantastic artists right down here with us in Atlanta with Fantasy Art Studios. They kind of started the ball rolling, working on Bark. And then before you know it, once we opened up social media, I just started getting hit by a whole bunch of artists, like, hey, I like what you're doing. Can I do the, can I do a commission for you? Can I do this and that? And I started saying, hey, shoot me some of your sketches. Let me see what you got. What's your rates? And before you know it, we ended up having like a team of like 4 different artists working on our stuff, So, Menzuo and Metatron are done by one artist, Marcelo Salazar. I also have Bruno Abadas, who did the cape for me.
Yeah.
And Fantasy Art Studios did Bark. So I became overnight kind of became this indie company that really can compete, because I feel really great about the comics we put out. They're not junk. They have good stories because we're all natural storytellers. And the art to me is just way above our expectations of what I thought these were going to even look like. So I'm happy. I'm excited.
Good. Now, did you find any barriers jumping in from basically doing full on chapter novels in going into comics? Of course, it's a different ball game, of course, with the illustrations and everything like that. So you're pretty much writing out the panels as far as well as the writing. So are you taking from the novels themselves, or were you creating brand new stories?
This is brand new. Cape Hellfire is a continuation. It basically picks up after Infinity 7 book 1. with Paladin trying to find out what happened to Blur, you know? So we just moved on. Obviously, when you get into something, you're taking it serious, it's important to educate yourself. So I read a couple of books on how this whole thing works, because, you know, at the end of the day, I write screenplays, I'm a novelist, and I'm also now a comic writer. And it's all about act 1, act 2, act 3. It's 3-act structure, every one of these stories. But there's rules to each one. When you're in novels, you can play around, you can stretch that 3-act structure out as far as you want, you know? In a script, for screenplays, you gotta be a little more intentional. Every scene counts. Everything that you introduce has to have meaning, even if it comes up later on. You don't just say, yeah, somebody's gonna go give a speech at some symposium and that doesn't mean anything. Well, what was he gonna say at the speech? You know, what was that about? How was that important? You need to be able to put all that information in so that the viewers are constantly engaged, like, okay, they put that there for a reason. Hopefully I see that later. And that way you deliver this, called the payoff, you know? And when you get to comics, now it's so much more intentional because it's smaller. You know, our comics are 22 pages, and you got to squeeze act 1, act 2, act 3 into 22 pages, which is crazy, because you maybe have between 4 to 7 panels each page.
Yeah.
And now you got to figure out, okay, top left third of the page is panel 1, you know, top middle third of the page is panel 2, panel 3. Do I run that across this, or just I do 2 panels long ways? You know, what kind of shots am I doing in here? You become a director. You're not just a writer, you know, so you got to do top down, ground up, over the shoulder, wide, short, middle. I mean, it's crazy. So it was a lot of education. Like I said, I read those books and I just got inspired. I was like, man, this is going to be amazing, because it's a challenge, you know. As a writer, I've written novels as long as 105,000 words, you know. I've written screenplays 120 pages, you know, 2-hour movie. Now I'm like 22 pages. This is going to be crazy, you know? And so it was a great challenge. And what was really amazing is being a creative, the minute you put all this to paper and you send it off, and then the artist comes back with the interpretation of what you're really trying to say in those panels, it's like giving birth, man. That's all I can explain. It's like, you can't believe that how this stuff comes together, you know? And that's just the pencils. When you see the pencils, it's like, yes, that's exactly what I was talking about, you know? And then it just comes together. It's amazing.
In some instances, like I can imagine you being somebody who has created novels before you even started comics. When you're creating dialogue for a comic, it's hard when you're doing like action sequences, because you want to fill a little bit more dialogue in there, and you gotta like pull back, and be like, you know what, this is an action scene, probably not a lot of talking going on.
Right.
I need to be a little bit more reserved. I probably put a lot more into the book as far as the graphic novel, because I'm trying to have the audience visualize everything, but I don't have to do that here because they can actually see it.
Yep. I think they say, you know, show is better than tell, you know, show not tell. That works out really, really good in comics. But I think there's a strategy to a successful comic in the storytelling. So as a writer, I'm always, what's the story first? You know, I don't care. I'm looking at TV shows, looking at movies. I want the story first. You know, you can't really just gloss me over with a bunch of special effects. I love that stuff. I'm a science fiction guy first.
I kind of figured that.
When I get past that, I got to see what the story is. You know what I mean? So that's how you're going to keep me coming back, because a lot of where we're going now in writing, which is really exciting, is it's character driven. Any show you look at, you know, it's got a great backdrop. I see it, but now it's character driven, and things are becoming more dramatic. You know, even in some of the comedies, you want them more like dramedies. You know, there has to be that drama. There has to be that conflict. There has to be that thing that character's going from point A to point B, and along the journey, they're trying to do something, and there's a shortfall. That didn't work. Reroute, try something else, go up, shortfall. That didn't work. Reroute, go up. And that's what keeps you looking, you know? So when you're in these panels and when you're on these pages and you're working in these panels, you're like, okay, I know I want 6 panels on this page, but I need to control the reader's eye. I'm moving them from left to right, left to right. If I got something really big and I got something important, that's gonna be my biggest panel. You know what I mean? So I might go top third for the first 3, bottom third, but in that middle 2/3 is going to be this huge, beautiful panel that kind of draws your eye. And then you go, oh, that was great. Oh, what are you talking about? And then you come back down the page again, And then sometimes I'm thinking, I got this reveal coming up, and I'm going to close out one page in the bottom right with one panel where the character might just open the door. And then the next page, boom, I might hit you with something big, like, whoa, that's what's going on, So it becomes a great challenge. It's exhilarating. And it's something that I really it's kind of an obsession of mine. I can't just wait to write the next comic now. I got to slow myself down, but I got 16 novels to work with. Where we are now is where like hybrid publishing is, we got Cosby Media Productions.
Right.
Our comic imprint is Starchild, so that's what we do. Right. And and I tell authors now, I'm like, hey man, comes down, we just got to get it funded. We have artists, we have colorists, we have lettering, we have all of that. If you have a novel that you want to see a comic story that extends from that, just start doing it, And I gave them the resources that I've used to learn about it. And I'll tell you, they all say the same thing. This is just exciting. As writers, we're always looking for that new thing that challenges us. And I think, I feel like we've been successful with doing it. So I'm just thrilled. They come in, the comics come in the boxes, and it's like, oh my God, here they are. This is great. So we're just going to keep pushing it, and hopefully the fans love it too.
Definitely. Now, for any other new publishers that are basically out there, what could you basically say to influence them that self-publishing is a lot better than major distribution?
For every author who I run into, any writer, I tell them that they should self-publish first, because you need to learn the business. You need to learn how to put yourself out there. I don't care who you are. If you go to any publisher now, literary agent, now they're asking for social media. That wasn't 10 years ago when I was trying to get published. That wasn't in the criteria. Now, when you put together your query letter, they're saying, what's your social media presence look like? Because they know that they're not going to just, a big publisher, I don't care how big they are, they got a reading list, they're going to send your book out, but they want to know, what are you going to do? Do you have some skin in the game? Right. So they ask you for your social media. And if you don't have a social media presence, they might not pick you up. They don't care how good your writing is, because they need you to be doing the work as well, So they don't want to just be the only ones doing all the heavy lifting. You got to push you. So I tell people, doing the indie scene, self-publishing, makes you learn. You write, you put it out, people give you reviews, you learn what people like, what they don't like. There's the flow of the story that maybe you need to go back and change your style. Your voice needs to be there. And so you'll get that first. And then once you've kind of got your feet wet, then you might want to try to pick up an agent for a bigger for traditional publishing.
Definitely. Now, how have you gone about this, from basically when you basically moved from novels to comics, when it was influenced on you to basically start from the ground up and basically create these characters off of the novels that you've already been writing so far? How did you depict that basically maybe the Cape or Menzoa was going to be the first ones?
These, we've got we've got, like I said, we have about maybe 6 superhero stories, but we've got, we started off with 4 of those stories. And it was really just a toss, like, hey, I'm going in, y'all want to do this? And then Keyshawn was like, yeah, I'm in. And then Lawrence he was in, and Dan was in too, So we just kind of started there. Some of the other authors weren't really ready to go on this endeavor yet, And sure. So we just said we'd try it out. What do we have to lose? If it didn't work on the Kickstarter, then, we have to figure out but I knew for me, I was going to do it, because I just started just really seeing the vision, because I was at those conventions. I know what people wanted. I was meeting fellow indie comic publishers. I was seeing how they were moving books and how they were having people come back. And I was like, we can do this, So if y'all don't do it, if this Kickstarter fails, I'm still going to do it, because I want to get these characters out. I want people to see these characters live and in color, not just in my head anymore, And so I felt like we had solid stories across the board. And like I said, by the grace of God, we were funded. So now I think what makes us different is that, we have 4 first issues that we're going to be offering people at these conventions now. So they're going to come to the table. We're going to have, I have Menzuo, And I'll have that wraparound cover is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
I mean, that is really crazy. And then so we'll have like all 4 of the Menzuo books when people come, you know.
There you
So
go.
if you want the Menzuo series, you're right there. The whole complete thing is going to be available to you, you know, and you'll be able to pick that up and just dive right into his world, you know, that Keyshawn's created. And it'll be the same thing with the cape, you know. We'll have the cape there at the convention, and then you'll have books 1, 2, and 3 of the cape with the original book, and then there was Overdrive, and then Infinity 7, which is pretty much an extension of this, you know.
So you're already like basically introducing the comic reader to the lore.
Absolutely.
Beforehand, they're more so like basically if I'm going to a Comic-Con and I walk up to your booth and I'm just there literally for the comics, they have no idea that you basically have not necessarily even graphic novels, but you have lore-based novels already incorporated with the comics that you're going to be selling.
Yep.
Damn. So
that's the vision. See.
So was there a signature moment? Now I've talked to a few indie creators that some have said 2018 when Black Panther came out, you know, a lot of people had a need for more Black driven comics to come out, whether it was major publishing or indie. Was there a definitive moment for you guys when you basically got into your whole mind that, yeah, I'm going for comics full on out right now. Aside from novels, the novels are still happening, but I'm going to do comics as well.
Well, like I said, it was last year when I remember the day we were on a Zoom call, and we were all 4 of us as the authors were like, "Can we really do this?" You know, and everybody's like, "Well, look, I've been doing a little research. It's like, you do this, you got to do, you got to get this presence, you got to get this and that." And we learned along the way, because we ended up running a 60-day Kickstarter, which is odd, but we knew we needed to have a learning curve. We had to figure some stuff out. We could change some things along the way, doing recruiting, getting people to come to the pages. So we were changing stuff. I met some people who taught me how to get the banners up there the right way for all the products and the rewards and stuff. So we needed those 60 days to really, really learn how to make the Kickstarter successful. And so as we were on the call that day, I was just getting this feeling like, you know what? This is going to be big. This is good. This is really good, you know? And I went ahead and got Starchild Comics Incorporated and got the EIN number and everything going. So I knew for me, the foot was on the gas and I wasn't going to pull back. You know, I was going to see this thing through one way or another, beg, steal, or borrow. I wanted to get this comic out because I just felt like when people come to the table to get the cape, it was always a trick. It was like, they come and say, "Oh, well, you know, which book do I start with?" I said, well, they would always see this one. So the art would pull them in, you know, and they'll go, "Oh man, these guys are cool. Well, is this book 1 or 2? I said, "Oh, it's book 2. I said, "Oh, well, I got to get both of them now." You know, so that was the draw, you know? So I was in my mind, I'm like, the art, man, the art is bringing people in. Like, you know, if we can do the comics now, we got a whole new wing of readers, you know, if people really like the art, because obviously they were digging the costumes and the look of the characters. So that wasn't a problem. So now if we can actually tell a story with this, I think we got a shot, you know. So far, you know, we've got a pretty decent following now on social media. People give us love when we show little panels and clips of and some of the artwork that we're working on, and they're loving it, you know. So I think that once we hit that, I got the first Comic-Con on the board coming up Friday.
Oh, was it Atlanta Comic-Con?
Yeah, it was crazy. I was supposed to be Atlanta Comic-Con it was supposed to be in July, but they actually teamed up with Fandemic, which is really crazy because that's like, I mean, they've got a whole bunch of guests coming, you know, and so now I'm really, really excited. I'm like, man, you've taken Atlanta Comic-Con, which was, you know, we finally got that hit about 2 years in a row. It's about, I think this is the 3rd year Atlanta Comic-Con. I was finally happy we got that. Even with the pandemic, I went. And then now we've teaming up with Fandemic, which has been around for a while. Yeah. And so now this combined is going to be incredible, you know. And I'm doing 2 panels there as well, 2 panel discussions. I did last year. I think I did the Anatomy of a Villain, where I was talking about breaking down villains of stories and the different 13 different archetypes of villains that you have. And then so this year I'm doing 2 panels. One is taking from a comic to a novel. What's the transition like?
Right.
Challenges. And then I'm also, the next one is the power of the page, breaking down these panels and how you move and point of views and all of that, So I was like, hey, I'm just basically just talking about my journey, So once they say you talk about what you're an expert in, and I'm not saying I'm an expert in the comic, but I know I learned, and I'm just sharing the knowledge that I have of what I learned, So it should be a lot of fun.
Now, for Atlanta being the mecca that it is, what is the comic scene like?
Oh, it's big, man. It is real. Again, you never know until you dive into this stuff and how serious it is. But it's some serious comic fans, because I've been going to a comic convention. Well, I've been going to conventions for a while, and obviously, we're the hub for like MomoCon is big down here, and Dragon Con. I mean, you're talking about 100,000 people coming through on Dragon Con. So there's a lot of fans of just conventions. So when Atlanta Comic-Con finally kicked off, I was excited because I think the first year they had maybe like 15,000 come through, and then the next year was like 20,000. And now with pandemic, I don't know what they're going to anticipate the whole weekend. It's probably going to be insane. But so as I walk around the conventions, I'm kind of meeting people. I'm seeing a lot of fandom with comics. They have people who are selling old school comics. I still got some old school ones here that I don't want to let go. From the '80s with X-Men. And there's a lot of indie comic publishers out there that are doing some fantastic work, and I pick their stuff up, man. I support them. I look at it. And so I'm excited because I know that people who came to the table before for just the books, now they're going to see this new thing and like, oh man, what you're working on. And hopefully we're just going to be moving them left and right with packages, get the book, get the books, you get the comic for free kind of a thing,
Right. So if I was to choose between the books or the comic book, which if you could describe to me, what was probably the biggest fan reaction you've seen from one of your books?
One of the coolest things I've had is I've gone to a couple of conventions in Tennessee. There was Fanboy and Con Nuga. And it was insane when it was like a moment where somebody came back. The first time it was like, I knew you were here. I was coming back. Did you end up writing the second cape yet? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm here. Like that was like, whoa, like they really dug the first one. And they were hoping that I had the second one the next year, So then I was like, man, now the pressure's on. Like every year you got to come out with something new because people are looking for you if they like what they bought the first time, So now when they come and they see the Cape Hellfire, I just think it's going to be just ridiculous how much, we're going to really continue to build that fan base.
So if you could also describe to me, how big of sci-fi played as a part of like how your writing is performed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sci-fi writer first. I grew up, my first science fiction book I ever read was Fahrenheit 451.
Okay.
Burning books, which was crazy, the whole dystopian kind of thing. And from there, I just kind of went with it because I think science fiction to me was like the last safe genre to write from, where you didn't really have to get in, you're dealing with aliens and humans. So nobody really has time for like racism and sexism and all those other things. It's really just about like factions and aliens and humans and humanoids and all these other groups just really vying for territories or whatever the story arc is. So I felt like it was pure storytelling because we didn't have to get involved with any of that other nonsense, Right. So I ended up writing the Star-Crossed Saga books 1, 2, and 3. Had a spinoff of that with a bounty hunter who I introduced in the third book. So he has his own novel now. So I've written a screenplay, an original screenplay with science fiction. And as I've developed as a writer, like I say, that drama component became more important now. So a lot of my writing is, you always put two genres together. It's like this is a drama science fiction story, rather than before I would have been more science fiction all out. Now it's like, I'm going to give you all that drama and the science fiction is the backdrop. So you're going to get all the world building, you're going to get all the cool technology, you're going to get that jargon. But if I do this correctly, I'm going to wrap you up in the lives of the character and the drama of their struggle of complications, versus success.
Bet. Now, amongst your team of authors that you have at your stable, basically with Starchild Comics, how do you choose your authors?
People just have to have a good story to tell. I've had a couple people come up and approach me like, hey, how do I get started? How can I get on board? And I tell them, you got to send me a synopsis. And you gotta have a vision of where this is going, because all of what we published, even when we were just doing Cosby Media Productions, was about taking stories that we felt eventually can be transcribed into the big screen, whether it's on TV or in film. So if I don't see that, if I just think you're just writing a story that's just going to be ho-hum, I'm not interested. But if I see the scope and I think the vision is there, that's what we partner with, So like I said, we already had these guys already had written their stuff that we had already taken on. So it was really just them kind of jumping in with us to get this done, I'm doing something very exciting this year, is that I had already written a book. It was a dystopian novel that I have. I completed it last year. And I'll tell you the story. This is really, really interesting. I had this guy come aboard and he said, I got a comic already done. Can I send it to you? I'm like, okay, send it. It was zombies. It was great. It looked great. And he sent it to me. And then I said, okay, I'll send you a contract. We'll basically put this together. We'll get it out for you. And then he flipped on me when I sent him the contract. Now he knew all the terms. I sent him the email, say, hey, this is what we're going to offer, this, blah, blah, blah. He was fine. Then he came back and flipped on me. And he said, well, I need about X amount of dollars just for you to sign my comic. And then I need royalties on top of that. And I said, you're charging 5 times as much as it's going to cost me to make this comic. And I'm going to give you royalties too. I said, see, the one thing you can't do is try a creative, because we're just going to make it anyway.
Right.
So, but I had already fallen in love with like zombies at this point. I wanted a zombie comic for our company,
Yeah. So
I went back and I looked and I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to drop this dystopian series because I have my own zombies that I already put in this novel. I'm just going to go ahead and write my own comic based on that world too, So that's where the Broken series came from. So Broken Book 1 is going to be the novel. Broken Book 2 is going to be the next story that branches off of that. And then they're going to drop the same day this year, So that's going to be something that people are going to come and like, well, which one do I get? So you got to get both, because this is a continuing story. You don't want to miss this, because then I'll go back and do book 3 in the novel form, or I may do book 3 in the comic and then go back book 4. You know what I mean? So I'm really like, I was like, when that guy did that, I thought that was just like God's way of talking to me, like, let him go about his business and you just write this. And I got to be honest, I just got all 22 pages are done in the pencils and ink. Yeah. And they blow away what this guy was trying to charge me for his.
Now I got to ask, did that gentleman end up releasing that book?
Who knows? I don't know where he is, and I really don't care. Because again, the problem is, everybody can put out artwork, and I think he did his own art, and the art was, if I'm rated, and I'm not trying to be funny, I'm not trying to throw shade, his artwork was probably about a 6 or 7, but it was decent for what it was. It was a zombie, like it looked really original and everything. The guy who I got working on mine, Ron, he's about a 9 right now, and this is just pencils and ink. I got another colorist, the guy who did coloring, Bruno, who did coloring for the Cape, is going to do the coloring and lettering for this. So I already know that, the story act structure, act 1, act 2, act 3 that I wrote in here was already very good, because it stemmed off of what I'd already written in the novel. So now I'm mixing my writing with their talent. I mean, I'm already past that guy, beyond. So I'm like, okay, well, take that comic and have fun with it. But I don't think anybody's gonna give him the money he was asking for.
Right. So in terms of your company, how do you feel about the current age of comic book adaptations, the boom of it that's been pretty much been happening in the past 4 years?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed overall, to be honest. I look at the big companies that have had the money and the resources to tell their stories, and I just feel like, man, you got 7,000 characters, and we're just sitting on these 10 or 20. Like, you don't want to move any one time. You don't want to take a chance. You got money. you got money to burn. You know what I mean? If it fails, oh what? You know, maybe go get a streaming service other than yourself to make it. You know, if you really that scared, you know, Netflix has money, they'll boom, you know, anything, you know, as long as they think it's gonna work. So I'm a little disappointed that we've stayed in this slow story element. You know, I think there's just so many more stories. Like, I mean, when you have that many characters, you can just go, you can just run. And I love when Marvel took a chance, honestly, with Guardians of the Galaxy, because not a lot of people knew that story.
Yeah.
And it became one of my favorites. You know, you got science fiction mixed with this whole superhero element is dope, you know. So the stories that they've taken the risk on have done well, and then but they still keep wanting to rehash. And, you know, oh yeah, well, Captain America died, but we think about bringing him back. Well, Iron Man died, we think about bringing. Why? Move on, man. You guys have so many more stories to tell. And I think that's why I was the most shocked with the love we were getting as an indie publisher, because people were like, you know, messaging me like, hey, you know, love what you're doing. And I'm like, well, thanks for the love, man. We really appreciate it. And they're like, no, seriously, I'm always looking for new stuff. Like they're tired of seeing the 9th Spider-Man and the 8th Batman. Like people are really, you know, yeah, they're making money, but people are ready for something else, you know, and I think that they can do better. They've got the money for the writers, you know, they've got the money for the budget, you know, in order to build the world and have the scope of everything covered. And they're just settling, you know. So in my mind, I feel good because we're in a good space. You know, people are really starting to gravitate towards the indie scene, and a lot of visibility is coming with that. So since we are writers, you come and you like what we have, and you want to pick it up, we could easily go ahead and put together a treatment and a screenplay and get it going, you know, as far as pitching it. So just ready.
Now, do you feel like it's too much too soon to introduce a plethora of characters as opposed to having one singular character carry on a series?
No, because, you know, a lot of what we have, like Menzuo he's a soloist, but he's got like some other, because he's from another planet, so he's got some other partners with him. I don't think that the overall landscape is too busy, because most of our characters really have one soul, one goal that's driving them. So it's almost, even though it's multiple people, it's almost like one character, you know?
Right.
And because they're interacting and playing off of each other, you're really just getting this singular unit of a character. It's not like some ancillary characters that are just kind of floating around. Like they all have a similar goal. And the way that they interact and play off of each other makes them almost appear as just one person. So it's easier for the fan base to follow it, you know, and you can just pick out that one person that you identify and you root for. But at the end of the day, they still have the same goal, because again, in writing in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 structure, I've got to just get that character from the beginning is my normal and my end is my new normal, you know. And if the characters have been successful, he may have been down and out and he may be up on top now, you know what I mean? Or he may have been up on top, but he was filled with a lot of things that made him a shallow character. And if he goes through this journey and I go with him, I start to see him change and adapt. And now he becomes this other character at the end where maybe he doesn't have as much success, but he's a better person for it, you know? So as long as I can just get that journey going, I think that our comics have done that, where we, our novels, where I mean, you're going to be so engrossed with the growth of these characters and the changes and the challenges and the complication that when they get to the end of that book, you're ready for the next one. You're ready for the next one. And then when you get to the end of the Cape, like I know I sent you a couple of copies, you know, in the Cape, it starts off with that top locator box. It says, following the events of Infinity 7.
Yep.
So we're trying to tell you right now, look, if you really are lost, Infinity 7 is where you go. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And at the end of it, because it kind of lives on a cliffhanger, it says at the end, to be continued, because we're going, you know? So my hope is that people just think that the art and the story is so dope. Like, now I have to go and read, or I have to know how this all started, you know? And the challenge in writing these comics is not just about, I'm just starting from here and I'm just going. I'm trying to weave in that first act enough information for the reader so that as they're reading it, they're getting, you know, it's exposition, but done in a way that I'm filling your mind with a lot of the the breadcrumbs about where the story started from, the foundation. But now here we are, when we get into Act 2, we've made the decision to go on the journey the characters have by the beginning of Act 2, and now they're going. So Act 1 was all the information I can give you, the vital information in those 1 to 5 pages max, and now 6 to 17, I'm giving you all the journey. And then 18, 19, we're at the climax. 20, 21, 22, I'm giving you the annulment, which is the new normal of where we are, So that's how it's got to be. And if we do that successfully, then people are going to dig it.
Now, do you find it easy as a writer? Do you find intersectionality available when you're writing out your characters? You may have a main character for this story, but do you see yourself writing a side character, or maybe somebody that could become a fan favorite in your novels?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a crazy idea in Infinity 7. So imagine that, and this was a crazy way we wrote the book, is that my fellow authors, Keyshawn and Kyle, allowed me to come up. We got on the phone, we talked about ideas and things and bringing this whole story together. And they allowed me graciously to do the outline. And then I delivered it to them, and everybody was like, oh, this is fire. This is ridiculous. Yeah, and I incorporated everybody's feedback. And then we just took a chapter. I took 1, somebody took 2, somebody took 3, then we took 4 and 5 and 6. So we each kind of did them that way. And then we would finish the pages, we'd send them to somebody, and then, okay, you're on 5. When you write 5, we're going to read them, feel like the continuity's there. Okay, who's on 6? Now start, but we did it as we went along to make sure that we had delivered, and our voice, there is no voice difference when you read each chapter. You would really think one person wrote the whole thing, but it's actually 3 different authors collaborating. And we had to do that because we got 14 superheroes to juggle around. I don't know Kyle's Majesty's characters as much as he may know my Cape characters, as much as anybody might know Menzuo and his folks. So even though we did write chapters with those characters, we had to kick it back and say, hey, would Menzuo talk like this? What's his vibe? Well, he would probably do something like that. And we go back and we fix it, So the voice would be the same. And all of that, when I ended up writing a couple of characters who appear in Infinity 7, like, as a creative, you're like thinking my next comic now, my next comic series, not even just the Cape, because by the end of this year, I would have 2 comics under my belt, which would be the Broken series and Cape. I'm already got this young little group, kind of like the Teen Titans kind of vibe. And they were characters that I introduced in Infinity 7. And it's a nice little twist of how I bring those characters around. So I'm already working now. I'm like, all right, we just got through with Broken. I'm about to start writing on this next one, this next group. I've already got my notes in my phone, So yeah, so in my mind, he was a cool little character. Probably not any, somebody people just might gloss over. But when he comes out with his comic and his other young folks with him, I think it's going to be just fire, So yeah, so I like to see the next level of the characters, Blur, now that you see her, used to be a character in the first Cape called Cheetah Girl, And so she has evolved already. She's got the whole new costume, the whole vibe going, Paladin's S4 suit now really used to just only be an S3. He had strength, stealth, and speed. Now he's up to 4, which is basically the autonomic system where anything he thinks of, the suit just kind of changes, in an instant. So the automaticity is the other S in there. So now we're like, okay, next comic, I want to see some new costumes, so Thief will probably evolve a little bit, so this is where it just gets exciting because you can just keep playing with this stuff and people can kind of say, well, I like, his first issue costume better than the second issue, so we'll get that dialogue going, just keep it authentic to the superhero world that I know that I fell in love with. And I'm hoping that people do the same with our stuff.
Definitely. So what does the rest of 2022 look for you for Starchild Comics?
Yeah, well, we are right now. Like I said, we'll have the 4 issues out by the end of this month. We'll fulfill the Kickstarter, people who support us. A lot of love to them. We had close to 100 backers who got us over the hump. So we're going to give them their comics. And then we had novel packages too, so they'll get their novels as well. Kyle is already starting work on his Majesty's comic. So I think last time I talked to him, I think he was on page like 17. So he was almost out of Act 2, almost finishing. And when we already have an artist who's going to partner with him on his comic. So my thing is by the end of the year, Broken comic will be out probably in June because it's pretty much inks are done. And then Majesty's will be out before the end of the year. So this year, as an indie publisher, we will have 4 distinct first edition comics, which is just huge. It's unheard of. Like nobody does that. Everybody's like, issue 1, 2, and 3 of just this. And here we are, we're going to have everything, So I think the vision that seemed real grandiose is actually becoming a reality. So I'm really excited because it's just going to help us move the books and bring people into our world. And then next year, just be the evolution. We'll be on the next Capes, the next Menzuos, the next Barks and Metatrons. And then, like I say, we'll have some of those little spin-off comics. And I'll even go back to my 6th grade year, bring out those characters finally, with their own comics. So I'm just thrilled, man. It's going to be crazy.
That's what's up, man. Well, hey, Braxton, I appreciate you doing this with me. This was excellent. I can't wait to see the rest of the projects coming out this year because usually within the indie world, like I get it. Sometimes it's a marathon. You might see an issue or 2 in the first year, and then you might see another issue or 2 second year, third year. You might not get a full volume until maybe like 3-4 years down the line. So the fact that you're able to pump them out so quickly is only a testament to the work that you guys are putting in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the artists have been great, man. They really work with us. We haven't had any pages that came to us and was like, oh man, now this isn't gonna work. Normally there's a couple of tweaks here and there, but that's normal. But those panels have exceeded our expectations. So we kudos to the artists, because I feel like we don't just have comic artists, we have artists. So these people put together art, like they really try to make a panel just look amazing, and then the whole page is just really off the charts. So I can't wait when people get their hands on them and they're able to give us feedback and let us know what they think.
Definitely. Is there anybody on your team that you basically wanted to shout out for the podcast?
Yeah, I'm gonna give all my artists shout outs. Fantasy Art Studios, Raymond Sanders over there, Clement Romaine. They're helping us out with the Bark stuff. I'm definitely gonna give Rom Silva, who's working on the Broken series right now, personally with me. He's just been amazing. Bruno Abidaz did the Cape. Definitely, like, Bruno is the man. I love what he did with the Cape. I can't even believe it myself. And Marcelo Salazar, who's working on Metatron now, finishing that up. He did Menzuo, gave us that ridiculous wraparound cover. And when he introduced that to me, because all of our comics are going to have the Infinity 7 symbol on the back, kind of a thing.
Right.
But when he gave me the wraparound, I was like, we got to go with that, because we don't have anything like that. So I try to give each one of our comics a little bit of their own identity. And even though, even with Marcelo, even though he's the artist, in both Menzuo and Metatron have their own look. When you look at the comics and you read them, you're like, man, this is almost like it's 2 different artists, So big shout out to all those guys putting in work. And of course, giving love to Keyshawn for his Menzuo stuff, Daniel, what he's doing with Bark, and Lawrence, what he's doing with Metatron. So all of our authors, our artists, just helping Starchild Comics just jump out on the map and get busy. So we're thankful, man.
Definitely, man. And I love the work that you guys are putting in, man. I can't wait to see what you guys got going for the future. So from James Grandmaster Facts Boyce, Braxton Cosby, Starchild Comics, we are out.